All right, let's be real. If the thought of filling out another form for college makes you just want to scream, stick around. Today, we are going to demystify a form that can feel like a huge mountain, but is actually the key to unlocking thousands of dollars for college. That's right, we're tackling the FAFSA.
I mean, you see that tuition sticker price and your jaw just hits the floor, right? You're probably thinking, how on earth does anyone actually afford this? And that is a totally fair question. You are definitely not alone in feeling that way.
But what if I told you that your path to making that number way less scary starts with just one form? We're talking about the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And it's so much more than just paperwork. It's basically your official ticket to getting financial help. And to make sure we get this right, we're basing this whole guide on some fantastic content from the pros over at AscendPath Career Strategies. So here's our game plan. We're going to cover why the FAFSA is so important, what you need to have ready, how to actually get through the application, what happens after you submit, and maybe most importantly, some pro tips to help you avoid common mistakes. Ready? Let's dive in. So, first things first, why even bother with all this? What's the big prize at the end? Well, it's simple. The FAFSA is pretty much the one and only gateway to the biggest pot of student aid in the entire country. And we're not just talking about one kind of help here. The FAFSA unlocks so much. You've got Pell Grants, that's money you don't even have to pay back. Then there's federal work study, which lets you earn money while you're on campus. Of course, it's also how you get federal loans. And trust me, those usually have way better terms than private ones. Oh, and here's the kicker. A ton of schools won't even look at you for their own scholarships unless you've filled this out. Okay, really important update here. There's been a pretty big change recently. You might have heard people talk about something called the EFC, the Expected Family Contribution. Well, you can just go ahead and forget that term. The new kid on the block is called the SAI, or the Student Aid Index. So what does that actually mean for you? Here's the bottom line. The SAI is just a number colleges use to figure out how much aid you can get. And all you need to remember is this. The lower your SAI, the more financial needs you have in their eyes, which usually means more aid. Simple as that. All right, let's move on to our second section, gathering your tools. Just like any big project, doing a little bit of prep work now is going to save you a massive headache later. So let's get you organized. First things first, timing is absolutely everything. The FAFSA usually opens up on October 1st for the next school year. And you really, really want to be on top of this because a lot of the aid from states and schools is first come, first served. Seriously, when that money is gone, it is gone. Getting your form in early is a huge advantage. So here's your pre-FAFSA checklist. Before you even think about opening that website, get all this stuff together. Both a student and at least one parent need what's called an FSA ID. Think of it as your electronic signature. Then you'll need social security numbers, your federal tax returns, and records of what's in your bank and investment accounts. Now listen closely to this part. This does not include your retirement accounts, like a 401k or an IRA. Do not include those. Okay, you've got all your documents ready to go. You're prepared. Now for part 3. Let's walk through the application itself, so there are absolutely no surprises. Honestly, the whole thing really just boils down to these 6 simple steps. You'll start at the official website, studentaid.gov. You fill out the student's basic info, list the colleges you want to send this to, and then, and this is a huge time saver, you give consent for the FAFSA to pull your tax info directly from the IRS. After that, a parent fills out their part if it's needed, and then you both sign and hit submit. That's really the core of it. And hey, when you get to that step about adding schools, you've got a lot more room to play with than before. You can list up to 20 different colleges. This means you can really cast a wide net and see who gives you the best offer. And boom, you did it. You hit submit. Give yourself a high five. But hold on, the race isn't quite over yet. Let's talk about what happens next, so you can make sure all that hard work actually pays off. So in a few days, you're going to get something called a FAFSA submission summary. Basically, it's your receipt. And your job? Go over this thing with a fine-tooth comb. Seriously, double-check your name, the social security number, every single dollar amount. One tiny typo here can cause a huge delay, so reviewing this document is absolutely critical. You can't skip this step. Okay, so once the schools get your FAFSA and do their thing, they'll start sending you financial aid offers. And as you can see here, they're usually a mix of a few different things. You'll see grants and scholarships. That's the best kind. It's free money. You might see work study, which is money you earn. And then you'll see loans, which is money you have to borrow and pay back with interest. Understanding this mix is how you're going to compare your offers. And that brings us to our final section, which is maybe the most important one of all, pro tips and pitfalls. We're going to talk about how to avoid delays and get the most aid possible. Because that's the goal, right? Okay, you have to watch out for these common mistakes. They trip people up every single year. First, using the wrong social security number. A simple typo can bring everything to a grinding halt. Second, forgetting that both the student and a parent need to sign it. That's a classic mistake. Third, missing a specific school's deadline. Yep, they have their own. And finally, accidentally listing your retirement accounts as investments. Don't do it. That can seriously slash the amount of aid you get. All right, if you take away only one piece of advice from this entire thing, please let it be this. So many families think, oh, we make too much money, we won't qualify, so they don't even bother filing. But here's the secret. Tons of schools require the FAFSA even for their merit-based scholarships, the ones that have nothing to do with your income. By not filing, you could literally be walking away from free money. But, what if life throws you a curveball? The FAFSA uses older tax information, and that might not show what your life looks like today. If your family has dealt with a job loss, a divorce, or major medical bills since then, don't just accept the initial result. You need to call the school's financial aid office, explain what's happened, and ask them for what's called a professional judgment review. They actually have the power to adjust your aid based on your current situation. So there you have it. You've navigated the FAFSA. The aid offers are starting to roll in. But remember, that form, that was just step one. Now the real decision-making starts. And the big question you need to ask yourself is this. Looking at all these offers, how are you going to find the absolute best value for your future?